Let's see. So if everybody's okay with the record. Did it start the record?
Yeah, yes,
Okay.
you did. Thanks, Mike. And can you go back one on the slides? I think you actually hit. There we go. Thank you, and welcome everyone to our monthly NCyTE member webinar. And of course, you don't have to be a member to attend these webinars. And today we're going to be covering the bias busters, promoting diversity in cyber and technology. And this is going to be a panel session, and it's kind of hosted by our Diversity and Inclusion UK-US Special Interest Group. And the co-chairs are Steph Aldridge, who's the director of NeuroCyber in UK, and Dr. Deanne Cranford Wesley, who is the co-chair and also the director at the North Carolina Central University in their Cybersecurity Center and Lab, and also an NCyTE consultant. So the focus of the diversity group, and this came out of our trip and our information gathering week we had in the UK back in late November, early December, and we created 3 focus groups out of that. And this focus group is focusing on marginalized, neurodivergent, connecting with the community to reflect the community and protect the community and focus on the role of educational skills. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and go to the next slide. I'll introduce our panel as quickly. Can you go to the next slide, Mike? Yeah, thank you. So here's our panelists. I'm going to let each one of them introduce themselves and give a little background on their activity, and I'll start with Amy. Go ahead, Amy.
Hi, good morning, or good afternoon, or evening, wherever you all are in this great, big, wonderful world of ours. My name is Amy Hysell. I am the assessment analyst for the Centers of Academic Excellence in Cybersecurity Community here at California State University, San Bernardino. The community coordinates with over 450 colleges and universities across the United States and Puerto Rico. I am also coordinator of the annual National Cybersecurity Virtual Career Fair hosted together with the NCyTE Center, which brings together employers who are seeking top cyber talent with students from the CA community. I have over 10 years of experience working with youth ages 5 to 12, and I am currently an adult learner at California State University, San Bernardino, graduating fall of 2024. And I'm glad to be here.
Thanks, Amy. Hi, everyone. My name is Steph Aldridge. I'm the director at NeuroCyber. We created this network. We're a community interest company based in the UK. We are a network of very passionate individuals who work in cyber in lots of different roles, who came together mostly because post an event we ran that showcased really the skill sets of some very young autistic people at specialist SEND schools. We invited them. They did lots of activities and really knocked the business panels socks off in the sense of their speed of being able to get to capture the flag and all of those other things. And around the business need as well, when we think about organized crime, it's quite often autistic young individuals end up in this kind of trouble. So we kind of wanted to, we've done some work around catching them at the pass before they get into too much trouble. But in general, lots of the work that I've done is outreach, working with young people, and the inclusion piece around sort of schools, SEND schools, all of that kind of thing, and the value to cyber industry around neurodivergent people. So thank you.
Thank you, Steph. Susi?
Hi everyone, my name is Susana Barraza, but known as Susi. I'm the NIST program manager and I am the NIST staff liaison for the diversity and inclusion community of interest. And so at NIST, our mission is to energize, promote, and coordinate a robust community working together to advance the integrated ecosystem of cybersecurity, education, training, and workforce development. And we fulfill our mission by coordinating with government, academia, and industry to build on existing programs, facilitate change and innovation, and bring leadership together to increase the number of skilled cybersecurity professionals to keep our nation secure. Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you, Susan. And Jennifer.
Hey, how are you? My name is Jennifer Cox. I work for Tenured, a global company that works in cybersecurity. I'm a security engineering manager working out of the Irish office there. And then in my free time, I look after the Irish side of WiCyS's UK and I affiliate. The Irish side is pretty new to it, only joined in April, but the UK and I affiliate has been around for a while, and I've been a member of it for a long time. So now we're increasing our membership and getting stuck into all the communities across that whole area.
Thank you, Jennifer. Questions, but we're going to frame this around thinking about the general reduction or cutting of diversity and inclusion budgets being reported in the news. And you can, I don't know if any of you all heard, but like LinkedIn and Meta and Google have cut their budgets around DEI, as well as the universities in academia, University of North Carolina in Raleigh is an example of when they cut like 2.3 million out of their budget. So I'm going to go through the panel and get their input on and their feedback on what is the impact of this on attracting and retaining diversity with cybersecurity as an industry. And Jennifer, I'll start with you since you're from the industry.
Yeah, sure. I think there's going to be some easy to find facts around the lack of productivity or the lack of money made as such when you assume that there's going to be a lack of diversity because of the budget cuts. And I think that's a fairly, valid assumption that those kind of things will happen. If you haven't got the support systems there, you're not going to get the people in. My belief or my thought process on it is that it's I would call it a rookie move. I know some of these companies are quite big, but it feels like a very rookie move to do. It's very short-sighted to take those budgets away because we already know that the productivity, that the profitability, all of those things do DEI in place in companies. Now, imagine they're still trying to promote DEI, but not having the budget to support those kind of minority groups is going to certainly impact it. Now, I think if you've got a company who has managed to get 50-50 and, they're running successfully and they have 50-50 with women and men and then have every other diverse group accounted for where they can in the company, which I think it's going to be difficult to find some of those. But if you do, they'll do just fine because they've already got a good steady base in there. It's the companies that were only getting going that haven't yet seen the value in it that are more likely to cut the budgets, or it's companies or government bodies that can't see that benefit firsthand, that they're issuing budgets out to other places. So I think it's going to have a long-term detrimental effect for something which is essentially a short-term monetary action. And I think that where the budgets are cut is where you're going to see the biggest divide between success and stagnancy, I guess, from there. So the ones that are still investing in it and still nurturing it and still minding it. If I'm looking for a job somewhere in the industry, I'm absolutely going to look for a company that's going to support me as a woman, as a neurodivergent, actually as a menopausal woman. Let's take another box while I'm at it. But all these things. And if I have a choice, which in cybersecurity you often will have when you're in a career in the industry, or you have any years behind you. If I have the choice, I'm absolutely going to go with the company that's going to support me versus the one that I've seen cut their budgets, because I know that I'm going to have a future in that company. I'm not in a company who's going to take away things that quickly and put them back. So therefore, then naturally, that's going to lead to a less diverse company, and that's going to impact all the things we already know can benefit by having a diverse company. Maybe I'm oversimplifying it, but it does seem like, say, I call it a rookie mistake because it feels like a rookie mistake. It feels like a really, really obvious thing to not do, to not take the money from there. But, you know, maybe it's just because it's the area that I'm in, but there are facts out there and there's statistics, there's figures, there's numbers all over the place that show that it's the wrong thing to do. So I think the divide is going to really, really help those who aren't putting the money into it see why they should.
Yeah, thank you. Anyone else have on the panel would like to chime in on this? Just feel free.
Stephen.
Yes.
Hi.
Go ahead.
So that was a very and I'm coming at it from the academia perspective, and so Jennifer, thank you for your perspective on that. It was something I hadn't considered actually from the industry perspective, but yes. So while there are reductions in the DEI budgets, on my side, we still have programs that benefit the underserved or underrepresented populations. At our university, we have, for example, a women's and an adult reentry program. I myself am an adult reentry person. And we have a Veteran Success Center, Black and Brown Student Center. That's just a few of the things that we have here. We have a diverse student population who have created a cyber mentorship program to welcome new students and introduce them to the variety of opportunities that we have. And we also focus on community service from within our organization to target communities and populations that reflect the diversity of our student population. Our campus also teaches from several perspectives, including business, computer science, social sciences, and criminal justice. And we're top in the state of California for placed apprentices in cybersecurity roles. So it's kind of a thinking outside the box thing from where we're coming from to embrace other avenues in order to manage shrinking budgets and narrow focus, Jennifer, that you mentioned. You know, many people don't see themselves in a cyber capable role. And I think there's a misconception that working in cyber is too technical or out of reach with that many years of formal education, when in reality, the spectrum of opportunities range from highly technical to administrative to policy. And we need to ensure that we are reaching the masses and not the classes. It's great, and we have the talent in this country to fill that need. We just need to find those avenues that still exist within our systems to make that possible.
Okay, great. Thank you. Are there anyone else on the panel want to chime in on this topic? Go ahead.
I can chime in a little bit. I think on the government side, for example, this year, we didn't really get a budget until March. And so NIST got a big budget cut too, right? So we had to really prioritize from what I had seen, prioritize what is it that we can fund, right? And so I know at NIST we have our DA office, which still continue to provide resources to our employees, right? And then we also have employee resources group, which reminds me too what Jennifer mentioned earlier, how important those are to continue to retain diverse employees in the workforce. So I think we were able to leverage what we currently have, despite there is budget reductions within the federal government, and be able to prioritize those things. Also, like a big thing that NIST does is outreach, right? And so travel. A lot of outreach that we do is through travel and career fairs. And how do we get, the interest of future cyber talent to come to NIST, right? So we had to really also prioritize which career fairs we're traveling to be able to make the biggest impact, despite we do have like travel budget constraints, right? So we really had to prioritize what are the things, or where is it that we can create the most impact, despite our major cuts this physical year, just per se.
Great. Steph, do you have any comments on this?
smaller
Oh.
companies starting up and wondering what it is to build an ERG, what I kind of always say to people, and I don't deal at strategy level or anything like that, is, well, if you're the head of HR or people, then speak to the CEO and the board and say, look, we're just going to put some detail together and let the employees, people who are like-minded, feel safe with that person because they answer and they don't mind, all of that kind of stuff tend to normally morph together within a business. So actually, if I'm working for a company and we don't have an ERG and we're not talking about this stuff, but it comes from on top and they say, listen, we've got a tiny bit of budget. If you want to start an ERG group, what we could do is give you an hour every 2 weeks back from your working day to set it up and organizing it. That feels like support. And maybe once a month, we can, give you some food to have a couple of hours and maybe a lunch and learn. And is there somebody that we could bring in to do a talk to the whole company at the next all staff who could talk to us a little bit around neurodiversity? That stuff doesn't cost a huge amount of money. But what you're saying to your employees is, we're aware you're here. We don't necessarily want you to disclose. We want you to sort of find a safe space, black network, women's network, neurodivergent network. There's lots of different ways that you can ask your employees to sort of get together. And if there's a feedback loop from that, because the company said I could set this up, I've become the champion for my little group. And yeah, I can speak to the HR lead who's taking some of the information that's coming out of this, the difficulties within our business, some of the policies within the business that don't really work for us for whatever reason, that aren't supporting the needs of this specific group. I'm going to feed that back up the chain, and that chain listens and maybe tweaks some of those policies internally. That's, I think, as long as people feel heard, they'll go that extra mile. And it's exactly as Jennifer said, but for early stage companies thinking that this has to cost a lot of money, or the talk around LinkedIn, around, the fact that these budgets are being cut. For a lot of people, especially people my daughter's age, the sort of 28, 29, 20, 30-year-olds are kind of like, what's all that about? They're not getting it because they don't see what we see. They're a completely different younger generation. They want to collaborate. They want to mix. They've got lots of different types of friends, and they're way more open to this sort of transitional sense of being a human person, as it were. But yeah, anyway, thank you.
Thank you.
One thing.
And
Just on the end of what you were saying, Steph, about it doesn't cost a lot to do it. Like, it doesn't, but by cutting the budget, even if it's a small bit, what you're publicly is that suddenly the supports and the needs of all of those minority groups are a nice to have. That's what happens. When you cut budgets, you're cutting usually. So to me, in my mind, as somebody who may need supports on the ADHD side of things, then am I a nice to have in that sense? But like, to me, it's as important as being given a laptop. Like, a laptop is not a nice to have. I need that for work, but it's as important to me to be heard and recognized as it is to anybody else to need a laptop to do the job. I may not, like, I don't necessarily need beers every Friday and social to be able to know that there's funding there, to have access to resources that are needed for whichever of these groups need, and I think it's that the mentality that it's a nice to have. That's why they've hit that budget first. I know I'm probably stealing into your next bit of conversation, but I just wanted to add that.
No, it's good to have that understanding, and from my point of view, it was more a case of companies who don't have the money for whatever reason, the smaller companies. You're right. If you already work at a company who then decides to cut the budget, you're going to have to ask why that's happened.
Yeah,
100%.
Yeah, and as Jennifer said, we had a question coming up next, which I think you all really addressed that in your discussions and about the decrease in budgets and then what can you do about those things? And I think you really nailed it. There's still things that can be done, and a lot of that is the initiative too of those diverse populations working with their management and working with HR and whatnot. So yeah. Great. I think so. I'm going to, unless you want to add anything to that question, I'm going to go ahead. I think Jennifer had some more comments around that.
Sorry, I'm clearly on fire. I was just thinking that ironically, a lot of the people that can add things that cost less to it are the people in those groups. Like, for example, at a team, we just all went out for lunch together with the team, and someone said, well, we do some kind of team building activities, but we hadn't pre-approved any budget or anything for it. Now, my background is in theater and psychology, and I tripped and fell into cybersecurity, and I love it, right? So totally different. So guess who ended up creating activities for the teams to do as team building exercises? Because it's what I've done before. I've done theater exercises, and we send people off to take selfies with people and come back, and there's a point system, and they can win some time off. But it's often you need people to think differently, and the people that think differently are the ones that are going to help you to maintain this system, maintain this environment, and keep it all going on a smaller budget. But if you're going to cut the budget that brings all those people in there, manage on that smaller budget. Like Steph has given lots of ideas. I could think of a million ideas, and that's those people that are going. Well, everybody can bring it, sorry, but it's those people that are going to help you think about it differently as well.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. So I'm going to change a little bit on the next question is how can the existing systems within education and the workplace support and carry on, and how can we continue to do well with these less resources? Steph, I'll start with you.
Thanks. So as part of our NeuroUnity report, our survey allowed 200 people in a space of a month signed up and filled this form out. All of them are neurodivergent. We were pretty much 50-50, slightly less female to male. I think it was 53% men, but that's a really good input, 50-50 pretty much. 50% of them were in cyber. The other 50% were in other tech roles. But what we talked about was the employee life cycle. So if I sort of break it down around the recruitment practices, we had barriers and enablers for each of those 5 parts. So some of the barriers for recruitment was assessment activities, interviews, and a barrier might look like interviews are difficult, especially when people diverge from expected questions and you're kind of popped on the spot, to something like the organization did a really good job of keeping me updated on the current status of where I was and was very clear about the next steps. They even sent me the questions for interview. It's those kind of things that can be really helpful. As part of, we could go on actually. I think Jen and probably Susi both have a piece around the recruitment part. I think Jen had mentioned about the automated processes, and Susi had talked in other meetings that we'd had around other disadvantaged groups, around how you come out of jail and how you engage different sorts of groups like that. So I'm going to let them talk about recruitment on that piece, if that's okay.
Sure. Susi, you want to take that first?
On the recruit, can you tie in a question? I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought on that.
Well, basically, the main question was how can existing systems within education and the workplace support or carry on, and how can we continue to do well with less resources?
Yeah, so I touched up on earlier about, with the NIST, what we've done, we leverage what we do already have. I think one of the big ones that we internally do are the ERGs, the employee resource groups, have activities, and also within NIST, we have 6 laboratories, right? And even within each laboratory, we have a diversity and inclusion committee. And so within our committee, what we've, especially in the information technology laboratory, is we engage leadership. I know we may not have the funds to do certain things or activities, but we bring in leadership to bring up important key parts of sustaining the people that work in our agency, right? And also how do we bring more people in? So we definitely do activities that are they're not expensive to do. We do our best to foster an inclusive culture. NIST does a lot of trainings when it comes to DNIA, microaggressions. So we just strategize what we do on our campus based on the limited constraints that we do have. And I know going back to the recruitment that Steph was talking about. So this year, within the NICE program, our NICE webinars are targeted to underserved communities and underrepresented groups, right? So we had, I know she talked about formerly incarcerated individuals. So we had a webinar on formerly incarcerated individuals and how programs help these folks get into cyber, because sometimes even in a prison, they don't allow technology, right? So there's alternative solutions to that, and how to get them prepared and ready once they're out of jail and prison, right? And how do they prepare them despite, like, maybe they can get a security clearance, right? But there's still other opportunities for them. And I could put that in the chat if you guys want to go back and read those webinars. But we also, another thing when we talked about recruitment is another webinar we did in underserved communities is refugees, right? How do we help those that are coming into our country, for better jobs or safety issues because they're fleeing our country, et cetera. So how are they able to get into the cybersecurity field despite they do have, I guess, employment barriers, right? So there's different organizations that help those communities. We also discussed on rural America, right? And how does that look like for rural communities? And how does that look like in their local ecosystem when it comes to hiring and creating a diverse workforce? So I will definitely put in those links so you guys can go back and review the content and the recordings, and kind of pinpoint those organizations that are already doing the work in the community. For example, in September, we're going to have another webinar that targets the blind, and see what organizations are there and that are currently doing the work to help these communities. Hopefully that's just a little bit about everything on what we talked about with retention earlier, Steph.
That's great. Thank you. Amy, you want to chime in on this?
Sure. Actually, thanks, Susie. That was a great segue. Existing within education and continuing to do well with less resources, I think it's going to require thinking outside the box. So we regularly engage community partners, local industry, churches, social service organizations, such as like the foster care system. We engage students to take on some of the burden. Our students here on our campus have donated over 300,000 hours of service to the surrounding community. One of those avenues of outreach is the NCyTE program. Some of the goals of NCyTE are, and I quote, to ignite, increase, and sustain awareness of secondary cybersecurity content and cybersecurity post-secondary and career opportunities for participants through year-round engagement, and to increase student diversity in cybersecurity college and career readiness pathways at the secondary level. One of the schools in our network and an outstanding example of continuing to do well with potentially less resources is the University of Alabama in Huntsville, who works with students in the blind and visually impaired and deaf and hard of hearing community. Students in this program are learning about tools and skills and technology in the cybersecurity field with resources to empower, quite frankly, a diverse community that may have previously been overlooked for this type of employment.
Great, thank you. Jennifer, do you have any comments on this question?
As if I wouldn't. Of course I do. I think what you'll find, like with war, whether it's a time of COVID or whether it's a time when, you know, the economy is on its knees, people are creative and inventive, and we've learned now the importance of appreciating diversity, the importance of inclusion. And I think those of us that, for an example, like I'm not going to shut up about it very quickly, do you know? So it's the kind of thing that I'm still going to be active in. And if it turns out that there isn't budgets there and people can't do things, then I think what you'll find is those people that are involved with these communities, just they get together and they push harder for these things. And it's sadly, it's one of the lovely things that comes out of these moments. It's like during COVID when everything was awful, one of the lovely things that came out of it was a sense of community from time to time and how people did back each other and help each other out. And as well, like, you know, but I think that is some of what we're going to see. Like, it's not how it should be, but when we face these situations of things but not how they should be, we can either face them and say it's not how it should be different, and put all of our energy into that kind of activity, or we can face it head on and see what we can continue to do to show people that the decision was the wrong decision and that we're hell-bent on succeeding regardless of this wrong decision having been made. And there's many groups over the years, I'm sure all of you could think of half a dozen examples each, who have persisted and gone out in force and shown people why it was the wrong decision that was being made. And I think that's going to happen. And I think on a smaller day-to-day kind of level, if you think about it, there's bound to be somebody, you know, or a school that you know where you've bought materials because they didn't have the funding, the teacher didn't have the funding to give the materials to the kids in classes, or you've subsidized some sort of activity or a tour or event, or, you know, there's community things that you're sponsoring. Like, all of those things happen because people want them to happen and people get involved on the ground. And I think, like I say, I'm all about finding that silver lining always. Since I changed my way of thinking, I think the whole world looks differently. So for me, whilst it's wrong and it shouldn't happen, I think that we're actually going to find our real community and our real supporters as a result of this, and not the box tickers that wanted to look good on their profiles, because the ones who are really involved in it and really stuck into it are going to stay in the actual classrooms and in the boards on all of these schools, or the parents or the children that are students, sorry, that are attending any of these classes. You know, there will be some good that'll come out of it, and I genuinely believe that it'll turn back once people start to realize that.
Okay, great. Thank you. So I'm going to change a little bit on the direction, and I'm just going to ask each panel member a separate question and try to keep your responses to about 3 minutes based on our time we have left. I want to give a little bit of time for any chat questions or anything that the audience may have. So I'm going to start with Amy. Thinking about your transition into cyber within the education system and as a student, have you benefited from DEI programs, and how do you think future career changers can succeed without or within the DEI programs?
Well, Jennifer, the silver lining you spoke of for me, aside from my hair color and our hair color, is coming back after 20 years, over 20 years actually, of raising children. And it was quite honestly a daunting task. I didn't have any idea really how to get started. I mean, you would think that somebody, you know, who's nearing 50 would have a little idea, but, you know, the whole idea of an 18-year-old going to school for the first time, it's not much different actually when you're older. I reached out to those in my circle who were familiar with the process and just asked for help. I have a friend who was an admissions advisor, and she helped me with advice on which courses were better suited for someone in my situation who had not stepped foot in a classroom in over 2 decades. She advised me on the application and course selection process, and ultimately the requirements needed to transfer to a four-year university. I think as an adult learner, I have the benefit of a lived experience. I have paid bills, I've been in debt, I've been out of debt, I've been hired, laid off. And all these things are an asset as a career changer because you're able to see life through a different lens. I know that sounds really cliche to say, but it's the truth. On my campus, CSUSB reflects the dynamic diversity of the region. We have the most diverse student population of any university in the Inland Empire, and the second highest African American and Hispanic enrollment of all public universities in California. 70% of those who graduate are the first in their families to do so. We rank 4th in the state in social mobility, and I'd like to quote our president. This shows how CSUSB is able to help its students break down barriers, prepares them to prosper once they graduate, and advance into great paying jobs, helping them not only to define their own futures, but those of their families and even in their community. That's our CSUSB president, Tomas Morales. I am proud to represent not only my community, but also my university in its efforts to better the lives of its citizens.
Thank you, Amy. That was a great response. And you're really a role model for others in cyber and outside of cyber. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Jennifer, here's a question for you. What are the main challenges women in cyber within WiCyS report on, and what in your experience and work yourself have you suggested automated CV resumes as a software over the barriers that women have, and how does being part of WiCyS circumnavigate and educate women to be successful in obtaining cybersecurity careers?
Okay, so what we're finding, which shouldn't be a surprise to anyone, I guess, is that the cybersecurity is the most difficult one. People would say it's for everyone getting into cybersecurity, but it's especially difficult for women. The example that I had talked about prior to this call is about ATS systems, that when we're talking about technology, like, it's a great idea in theory if you want to have a cookie cutter person in seat. The one industry that, well, there's probably lots of industries, but in this case, the one industry it definitely doesn't apply to is cybersecurity, because all of the people that are targeting you are not cookie cutter people. So you need to make sure that who you're defending against say that you are as diverse in thought and as diverse in culture and backgrounds as potentially the people that are. It's an ATS system which is designed to, I get really annoyed about this, but which is designed not to be biased against people by stripping out names and ages and colleges that they went. It doesn't pick out the humans that are different in the right way. So actually, in this case, for women, it's less of a detriment, except if you have left to raise kids. If you're a returner, there's a big gap in your CV, and it doesn't understand. It's likely to push you to the career that you used to have, which may not be the career that you're coming back into. If you are neurodivergent, not finished all of your degrees, it will put you into an entry-level job, even with 20 years of it. People are absolutely definitely missing candidates by using an ATS system, and they're missing the different ones. They're missing the non-cookie cutter candidate, which cybersecurity needs. They need to have all of these different types of people for there. And the way we see them over in Nashville, not for today, we give lots of training for people so they can tick those cert boxes. We and put people on scholarship programs and such like that. But for me, the biggest benefit has been absolutely 110% the network, meeting all of the people in it, because I have never felt more supported than I have when I met another woman who understands where I'm coming from. Whether it's the parental side, it's the returning to, well, I didn't return to work, but for those who return to work or being neurodivergent or just being frustrated with life, or like say, again, at the stage of my life as well. But who understands me and realizing that I'm not alone here. They're also the only woman in their team. That has had the most value. And almost every woman I know that's gone into a cybersecurity job has been referred into it via a contact. They've got it themselves, but they've gotten the interview through a referral because the ATS system wouldn't let them in. So what I find, and the network we have in WiCyS, it's global. It has been it's been a total eye-opener for me. I haven't needed to use it for stuff like that, but I've learned to see the impact of that kind. It's unmatched.
Thank you. That's very insightful, and I agree. Networking is probably one of the best ways to gain access to jobs and other opportunities. So okay, the next question I have is for Susi. Could you talk about what NIST is doing in relationship to mitigating barriers to inclusion and equity? And in your experience, what you see working well, and where does leadership play a role?
Yeah, so I'm gonna slightly divide my question into like two parts. One on the NIST as a federal employee, right? Because in itself, that's one thing. And then what NICE is doing. So as an employee at a federal agency, what I see my DO office is doing is providing employees with learning opportunities, right? We have the voluntary employee organizations. Our organization does its best to be very inclusive, and we have like heritage and observance celebrations. They have different trainings for leadership and our employees to really learn about the different groups that are within a DEIA, and how is it that we can learn from each other. Like for example, recently in the early spring, there was a training on the different generations we have at NIST, right? We have folks that have been here for more than 30 years. We have very young professionals that are, they think like totally outside the box as to compare to employees that have been here for more than 20 years, right? So they really help us and teach us how is it that we can interact with those different diversity of thought, right? So I think there's, even within the federal government, if we want to change policy, it's very slow. But I know there is a progress towards if there is any type of DIA policy that we want to implement, it will take time. We kind of know that over federal government, usually it can be a little bit slow. Another thing that I know we've brought up within our leadership is job descriptions when it comes to USA jobs. And so if we're out here trying to recruit folks to come join our agency, how do we make it easier for them to understand that? So I know we've put that on the table to our leadership, right? And they've taken that in and seeing like, okay, but even that process can be slow, right? It's going to take time. But it's something that we do share, like that are barriers, right? That we can work to tackle. And then going to the NIST side, the NICE program office side, when it comes to diversity and inclusion, part of our NICE strategic plan under our goal number 2 is to foster proven learning methods and experiences shown to effectively build and sustain a diverse, skilled, and inclusive workforce. So in late 2022, early 2023, the project team came about on D&I efforts, where we developed a one-pager to raise awareness and spark interest in getting talent to join as adjunct professionals, because there's a shortage there, right? Getting diverse adjunct professionals in academia. We've also were able to publish a one-pager that highlights cybersecurity and DIA cybersecurity careers and resources. We were also able to develop a website or webpage on DIA resources that are community groups, right? A lot of, during that project team, we discovered that there's a lot of nonprofits who really do the work out in the community and really touch into those groups that need that help. And so how is it that we can use our platform and the resources we have at NICE to showcase those smaller nonprofits, small businesses that have opportunities? And a lot of these are free opportunities for underserved communities to tap into. And so kind of how I mentioned before, our mission is to coordinate with government, academia, and industry. And a lot of the work that we do at NICE within our community groups and our community of interest is volunteer work, right? So we want to bring in folks and individuals to really help us and let us know what is working in their community and how is it that we can build project teams to create products to be able to then eventually publish and launch for the public to have access to. So those are some of the few things that we're doing. And actually with Dr. Cranford in our community of interest, we're working on a mentoring guide. And how is it that that folks outside can use this mentoring guide to retain, to recruit diverse workforce. So I'll definitely put the link on our diversity community of interest, and people are more than welcome to join. It's a group that we come together. We'll have speakers come in and project teams to be able to have deliverables be published and available online for the community to use. Back to you, Steve.
Thank you. I did post the link to the one pagers, but I didn't actually have time to focus in on the one, but they can look at that and find our audience can go in and look at those one pagers from NIST. So the next question is going to be for Steph, and here's the question. Would you tell us a little about the NeuroUnity report in relation to enablers within the employee life cycle?
Sure. I love what Susie just spoke about, and obviously Jennifer as well, and you too, Amy. What we're talking about is community, belonging somewhere, and going to the places that we're trying to attract to find out what it is they need and how they need it. We're not sitting around a board table somewhere in the middle of the, Pacific Ocean trying to create a set of resources for people we haven't met yet. So I think, that's been lovely for and the NCyTE has been really welcoming to us across here in the UK as well. But when we think about the enablers around the employee life cycle, it's really simple stuff like employer communication, the provision and the obvious acceptance around reasonable adjustments, the fact that I can see myself on your website by color, race, sex, all of those things. Welcoming environment cropped up time and time again, offering mentors so that you can kind of deal with people who are on the same level as you and not have to keep asking your boss, stopping your boss from doing things in the day. Induction programs, really well organized, being provided with the clear set of next steps, flexible working. When they talk about a supportive environment, all of the things Susie's talked about, I'll happily be a volunteer anywhere as long as I feel like it's for the greater good and I'm bringing some positivity and I'm feeling supported. I had a couple more down here around the training. Being open to all levels, continuously learning, accessing training as and when that suits the person, and actually training managers to be better around communication. Those kind of things really help. And having some progression. Oh, somebody's thinking about what I'm good at and where I could be in the next 6 months, a year. That stuff's really important as well. They talked a little bit around exit interviews. I've never had one. But yeah, they are some of the enablers. And I think we all know when we're being appreciated, So thank you.
Well, thank you. That's very insightful, and I can relate to some of my experiences in my past jobs. So thank you for that, Steph, and thank you for the panel. And so I'll give a chance here for anyone that has a question to the panel. We don't have much time left, about 6 minutes, but if you can either put it in the chat, we probably won't be able to get to all those, or you can just unmute and ask the question, or raise your hand, and then we can identify you, and then you can get the ask the question if you haven't, or put it in the chat.
It's Nigel Jones here from the UK. Stephen, I don't know if I could.
Sure. Yes.
And I know it's early days in the life of the SIG at this point, but I'm interested to hear from the panel the degree to which their discussion has identified shared challenges in this regard, both sides of the Atlantic, as it were.
Yes.
Go on, Deanne. I think for us, most of us are women, actually, bar the lovely Stephen and one other chap. But there's similar scenarios that we come up against, and it's almost inherently understood just by the fact that we are all women doing another volunteering piece. The idea of the transatlantic, though, is much more interesting to me around the differences and similarities between US and UK. I think the differences are really big and different, but the similarities are very similar. So
I don't know if Deanne has any comments on that or not, if she's still on. I know she had her NCyTE activity going on, so.
Yeah, I'm still here. I just want to say the discussion was very, very good. The information that's shared was wonderful. I love how Amy brought in NCyTE, as I am doing a NCyTE camp, and what we're seeing is that diversity. I have 20% women in my NCyTE camp this year, which is the first in a long time. Years maybe. I think the first NCyTE camp I did have that, and then it was always one or two. But still, there is 80% male. So we really have work to do, and making students, young girls, high schools, because I'm doing a high school camp, girls know that the cyber space is for them. And there is a space in cyber for them. And I think bringing that awareness is going to help all the things we're talking about with the diversity. But what I really, really love is even with the 20% women, we had about also 20% in other cultures, Latino. We've had about and just all the cultures. We have about 20% around, so we're really happy with the diversity in the Raspberry Pi camp this week. But also WiCyS, and I heard Jennifer talk about WiCyS, and we have a WiCyS group as well that is very diverse. We also have allies, so we have men as part of our WiCyS group. Here at North Carolina Central, which is a HBCU. And so we're seeing some change. We realize that we need a lot more diversity in the field of IT and cyber. So I'll end with that. Wonderful job, all my SIG mates, and I'm just so proud of everything we're doing and all the work all of you doing individually. So thank you, Stephen.
Thank you, Deanne. And one last thing before we leave, and I know that the SIG is started. They're still evolving and trying to formulate. But you and Steph, I don't know if you want to just talk about your future. What do you think the future, and how are you going to be entering or recruiting more members of the SIG? Just to maybe let people know that that are attending this webinar.
I think we're definitely open to recruiting more members for our transatlantic SIG. And I had a little piece that I hadn't quite sent to Deanne just yet, but sort of our short-term, medium-term and some long-term goals, which I thought would be fun. Try and get those children from different high schools coming together for some transatlantic type competitions that we can get them to join. I mean, something like that would be a moonshot piece for me. I think getting people together so that they can actually learn from one another across the pond, playing on the same games, that kind of stuff. That's the kind of community that I've seen built in the past with young children, and that entry level together, they stick together for the rest of their lives.
Yes,
honestly, if they get a job in cyber, that's who they stick with, the guys and gals they first did this stuff with, because it was fun.
Absolutely. I agree totally, Steph, and I I do agree. You and I talked a little bit about the competitions, and I think that's a wonderful idea. I do want to say that this past week, I was invited to Pat Ryan's Girls First program, and and I actually did a virtual meeting with those girls, and we talked about careers in cyber. It was a wonderful experience for me. And I got feedback from her, and she said it was a wonderful event. The girls loved me. We're going to come back and we're going to do something virtually with robots. And so those kinds of collaboration, even though we're in different countries, those kinds of things is just wonderful with technology that we can do. And we should all reach out and help one another and help all the women across the country do what we're doing and share what we know and share our experiences. And I think what we're doing with this webinar, with work that we're doing and with outreach and all the SIGs is just wonderful. And I love and very passionate about being a part of it.
Okay, thank you all. I'm going to turn it back to Mike. Mike did put in the chat. You can contact him, and he can get in your desire to join this SIG to Deanne and to Steph. So I'm going to turn it back to Mike.
Thanks, everybody. What a great conversation. I mean, what you guys really were shared a lot of stories, and it was really valuable to listen to. And it's fun to see that the momentum is really building and continues to build to help men, women, and build diversity throughout the system. We do this every month. We have these meetings. We bring folks together, and it's really important for us to get feedback from everybody. So I did put a link in there. So I would really appreciate it, everybody, if you filled out that evaluation. It only takes a few minutes. And it's one way that we can bring new ideas and new topics to our monthly meetings. As many of you have been here before to see those. So please do that. Otherwise, I don't think we have anything else. Let's keep the conversation going. Maybe we'll have a follow-up meeting to talk about some action steps and how we can continue to keep the momentum. Have a great weekend, everybody. I don't know, Michelle, if or anybody else wants to say anything to wrap this up, but we're going to call it good. And
Michelle may have something to say.
I'll just say thanks everyone for joining, and have a nice holiday weekend coming up. So be safe.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks very much. Thanks, everyone. Bye, Susie. Bye, Amy. Lovely to hear you.
Great job.
Bye.
Great job, guys. Have a wonderful holiday. Good to see you.
Awesome, Susie.
Enjoy.
Later. Bye, Amy.
Go Diversity SIG.
Yeah. Diversity SIG. Who's that?
Oh, gosh.
Take care, everyone.
All right. Bye.
Thanks.